in too many of our laws. Even though he said one more question, I'm going to go ahead and I'm having fun, so we're going to do two more questions. I want to give some folks in the back a chance. You can go ahead right there.
Hi, my name is Kim Platt, and I have a blog called AskThisBlackWoman.com.
I'm sorry, what was this?
It's called AskThisBlackWoman.com.
AskThisBlackWoman.com.
Yeah, and you should check it out.
My wife has the same website. That's like when I go home, I've got to plug into that website. Ask this black woman, did you throw out the garbage?
You made a statement earlier that, you know, the achievements, the political achievements of Bloody Sunday and the culmination of the Civil Rights Movement were, you know, the efforts of us all. And you have been in the press recently about being tough on native-born black people, African Americans, if you will. And in New York City, we have an unemployment rate among African American men of almost 50%. What will you do about that?
Well, you know, first of all, it's interesting how people just pick out selectively what you say. So I want to be clear about what you're referring to. There was a big article in the Washington Post where I said, they quoted me as saying, and this is an accurate quote, where I said that the problems that the African American community faces had to do with neglect on the part of government, but that there's some things that we've got to take charge of. So, for example, I said, you know, we can get all the money we want in the schools, but if parents don't turn off the TV set and put the video machine away, if parents don't parent, our kids aren't going to learn. And you can't keep on blaming the teachers if the children are acting up in the classroom all the time. Now, that wasn't being hard on black folks, I'm just telling the truth. That doesn't mean, and that's not an excuse for underfunding the school system. Right? I mean, Dr. King used to say, it's not either or, it's both and. So it's both individual responsibility and societal responsibility. The schools need more money, and our kids need to study harder. You know, we need more economic development in our communities, but we also need to make sure that folks aren't breaking 40-ounce bottles on our curbs and respect our community. Right? I mean, those things aren't contradictory. Now, what are we going to do about unemployment for African American youth? First of all, unemployment is across the board. You go to Iowa, in some of these rural communities, you're seeing the same thing as you're seeing over here. And by the way, the same problems. Young men, there it's methamphetamines as opposed to cocaine, but the same pattern of hopelessness and despair is there as it is here. So some of this agenda is just an agenda that extends all across America. Investing in, as I said, early childhood education. Making sure that our teachers are adequately paid and adequately inspired so that they are engaging and inspiring our children. Making sure that young people have access to college educations. 200,000 children right now aren't going to college simply because they can't afford to pay for it. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Now, what is true is that in some communities, in inner city neighborhoods in New York or the south side of Chicago where I live, the concentration of poverty and hopelessness is so great that we need some special interventions. We've got some special problems. I'll give you an example. Ex-offenders. You know, when I was in the state legislature, I passed legislation saying nonviolent ex-offenders, you got to give them a second chance. At the time, Illinois had a law where they couldn't even get a barber's license. And my attitude was, well, if they can't cut hair, then where can they go? All they're going to do is go back on the streets and then go back into jail, except by that time they'll be the father of 2 or 3 kids who will only know their father as somebody who was in jail, and the cycle starts all over again. So we've got to invest in transition programs for ex-offenders. In some cases, giving them a jump start in terms of doing some useful services in the community that they can be paid for so that they can establish a track record of having gone straight so that they can then actually enter into the private marketplace to get a job. That's something that we're going to have to invest in. The other thing, generally in many of our communities, we've got to put some special concentration on economic development. Simple stuff, you know, just making sure that we're seeing grocery stores in our communities that sell fresh produce. Making sure that we lay broadband lines, and broadband lines go everywhere in communities so people can access the internet superhighway. Taking opportunities, as I said, like energy, where we know we're going to have to invest heavily in energy conservation and thinking creatively. Well, one of the best ways in areas like the Northeast to reduce energy consumption and to reduce pollution is to insulate our homes more effectively. Well, we could train a whole cadre of young men and women to install insulation in some of the old, aging housing stock in places like Brooklyn or the Bronx. To make a huge difference and would give them an opportunity. So those are the kinds of areas we've got to help working people generally with the Employee Free Choice Act so they can unionize, so they can get paid. We've got to make sure that that the minimum wage keeps up with inflation, that the earned income tax credit is in place for folks who work so that they're getting enough take-home pay. There are a lot of things we've got to do for workers generally, but then there's some special problems that we're going to have to deal with elsewhere. All right. Okay. This is going to be the last question right here.